There's a lot to talk about today. We're going to do the banking center, and that is where the most people use the banking center, like 99% of the time. So there's a lot to go over. I'm going to talk about how to use it, and then also a lot of common errors that I see people doing. So hopefully it will prevent you from doing those, or make you aware that maybe you're doing those.
And Sarah, I just put up a poll real quick. So if we could let people kind of fill out this poll, give us an idea of how comfortable you are with your bookkeeping. Just let people fill this second one out, and then I'm going to looks like most 64% need to up their game in their bookkeeping. So cool. We don't have anyone yet that says they're a pro or that they know enough to be dangerous. I think sometimes I fall into the I know enough to be dangerous category. So I know enough to really mess it up.
I think a lot of people are like that.
Yep.
So hopefully a little either refresher or some new information will help you not be dangerous.
Right on. I'm actually going to go. Also, I have another poll that just asks what version of QuickBooks that you're currently using. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Back-to-back polls. I appreciate it. Looks like it's a tie right now between QuickBooks Online and desktop. So it's a pretty even split. So I think that Sarah will be able to tell us more. I know that she did last time in telling us a little bit about the differences, but I'm pretty sure that she'll be able to talk about that a little bit too. So cool. Thank you very much for taking the polls.
Okay, so just starting off with that, the biggest difference between QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop is kind of the banking center on QuickBooks Online. You don't really have that on QuickBooks Desktop. You can download transactions from your bank and enter them into QuickBooks Desktop, which is a little bit how I'm going to do it today because it's a fake account, so I can't have like a real bank account to set it up to. But with QuickBooks Online, you can connect your bank so that transactions come through daily. And QuickBooks Desktop, you have to manually get the transactions from your bank and then upload them to QuickBooks Desktop. So that is kind of a big difference, and a big reason why people like QuickBooks Online better than QuickBooks Desktop. So just kind of something to think about if you're considering moving over or if you're still deciding which QuickBooks to use. So this is the dashboard into QuickBooks Online. So we're going to talk all about the banking center today. So you just go to the left-hand menu and click on banking. And you can see there's 4 different tabs up here. I'm going to start with the first one, which is the banking. So the way that QuickBooks Online works is that you can either connect your account directly. So you connect QuickBooks Online with your bank account through your online banking, or you can upload transactions. So to connect your account, you would just click connect account, and it walks you through. You look up your bank. You need to know your bank online username and password, and you connect it through there. Because this is a fake account, I'm not going to do it that way. So I'm going to show you the other way. But how the transactions show up and how you deal with them is the same, no matter how you get the transactions. So if you don't connect directly, you can upload the transaction. So I'm going to do that. So pretty much all the banks that I've come across, you are able to download a file in one of these formats formats here. The most common ones are CSV or QBO, and how you get those from your bank is really dependent on your bank, but a lot of them will have like a frequently asked questions thing or something that has information on this because it's becoming pretty common. So once you download your transactions from your bank, then we need to upload them here. So when you download them, just remember where you saved the file. And then we just need to find the file. So the file I used is a CSV file. You can see the CSV at the end. So it's going to say, here's the file, which QuickBooks account does this go to? So these are all the transactions from my checking account. So I'm going to choose checking. And then it just wants to make sure that it's going to match up what's on the spreadsheet to what's going to go into QuickBooks. So it's just verifying that column 2 is the date and the date format, the description, the amount. It's not really sure which one is the amount. So for money spent, you click on this and I'm going to go down and select debit because that's what it is in my spreadsheet. And money received on my spreadsheet is credit. Some banks will do their spreadsheet have both positive and negative numbers in one column, and some of them have them separated. So you have to pick which one. Mine has them separated out. And then it's just going to verify that you want to download all of these transactions. And if you do, you just click next. So now this screen will look the same whether you directly connect your account to QuickBooks or you do what I just did and import your transactions. So either way, it's going to look the same and you're going to add transactions the same way. So I'm going to start at the top here. Just like in pretty much all of QuickBooks, if you have a list of items, you can sort them however you want to. Just click on the top here. So if I want to sort them by date, I can sort them by date. If I want to sort them by description, money spent, you can sort by any way that you want to. I'm going to go ahead and sort it by date, so I can do the oldest one first. So we're going to start with this first transaction here. So if you click on it, it will tell you down here, bank detail. This is all the information that's coming over from your bank. So it gives you the description that your bank is giving you. So the first thing I want to do is add a vendor or a customer. Because this was money received, it's going to be a customer. So I'm going to type in the name of it. If it's not there already, then you just click add. You want to make sure you choose whether it's a vendor or customer. So customer, you're going to receive money from. A vendor is someone that you're paying money to. So Stripe is a customer, and I'm going to click save. Obviously, Stripe itself is not the customer, but because it lumps all the transactions together, I'm just going to put it in as Stripe customer. If you want to break it down, I'll show you how to break it down to separate line items. But for most people, if you're doing like Stripe, Shopify, Square, any of those, you just get one transaction that comes in per day. So I'm going to enter either the vendor or customer, and then I'm going to categorize it. So this is going to be sale of product income for me. The location and class are only if you have those set up. So if you have different locations, you can create which location this was from. If you have different classes, I think I talked about it a little bit in the last time, but we'll talk about class and location more in the last session if you're not sure what those are. Tags is something new that QuickBooks is doing. I haven't really used them much just because I haven't really found a use for them. So if anyone else is using them and knows a good use, let me know. But it's basically a way to add like another category to your transaction, and you can run reports with items just tagged certain things. So I don't really use tags. Again, if you're using them, let me know what you use them for, because I haven't really found a need for them yet. And then the memo is whatever comes over from the bank. You can just leave that the same, or you can add information if you want. And then once you have everything filled in, you just click add. And now it has added that transaction into QuickBooks. So that's the most common thing you're going to do on here, is just add transactions. So again, the next one down, This one was from Shopify. So I'm going to add Shopify as another customer. It's going to be the sale of product income. I'm just going to keep the memo the same, and I'm just going to add it. So that's mostly what people do on here, is just add transactions. But there are a few other things that you can do. So you can create rules. So as I go down here, I can see I have a lot of Shopify and a lot of Stripes. So instead of every single time having to add in the payee, add in the category, I can make a rule. So I'm going to click on this Shopify one and go down to create a rule. I'm going to call this rule Shopify, and it's going to be applied to all money that comes in to all of my bank accounts. And it contains a description of Shopify. So a lot of people will make this rule and just keep this whatever the QuickBooks wanted it to be. But if I scroll through it, you can see there's a bunch of numbers on here, and those are unique to each transaction. So if I create this rule that the description has to have all of these numbers, it's only going to apply to this one transaction because it's the only one that has these unique numbers. So I go through and I delete all this extra stuff, and I say, I want this rule to be applied if the description contains Shopify, and that's it. We'll go over another case because sometimes you might have a, like QuickBooks, if you pay a separate fee for the QuickBooks Online, then you do payroll. I'll show you how to make it so if you don't want it to apply to everything, it doesn't have to. But for Shopify, money coming in from Shopify, I want it to then get deposited. So you pick the transaction type. This is going to be deposit. The category is going to be the sale of the product income. And the payee is always going to be Shopify. Again, you can add tags, class, location, just like in the regular transactions if you want. And then add memo. I'm just going to change the memo to just Shopify. You don't have to have a memo if you don't want to. You can leave that blank. And then down here, it has this auto add. So if you click on auto add, QuickBooks will automatically add them, and you never really see them on here. I always recommend turning auto add off, because sometimes QuickBooks will see, like maybe you had a Shopify fee and it applied this to the fee, and so it got applied wrong. So I always say turn the auto add off, because you want to double check that QuickBooks is applying this rule correctly before you actually add it to your QuickBooks. So then when you have all that filled out, you're going to click save. So now you can see all of these Shopify ones have a rule on them. So then all I have to do is, because I know it's applying the rule and filling out all the information for me, I just have to click add. To make it even easier, if I have a bunch of Shopify stuff, I can sort this by description. So I put all the Shopifys together so I can see I have them all here. And if I click the boxes next to them, go down and get them all. And if they're all correct, the rule is applied correctly, I can just click accept, and it adds all of them at once. So if you have a lot of transactions, either to or from the same thing or same person, same business, and are getting categorized the same, if you apply a rule and then sort by description, you can add a bunch at one time and it saves you a lot of time. I'm going to go back and sort this back by date again. So we'll just go down on this one. You can see this was the ATM withdrawal. What I see a lot of people do is not fill out this vendor or customer, especially if it's like a withdrawal that was a personal expense. You always want to have a vendor or a customer in here. So if it's a withdrawal to you personally, you would just put your name in as a vendor. I'm going to get categorized as pay and personal expenses, and then add it. I see a lot of people just go through and see like, okay, this is Stripe, sale of product looks good, I'm just going to go ahead and add it. QuickBooks is just a computer program. It's looking at numbers, it's looking at keywords, and it is making assumptions on what category to categorize things as. It doesn't mean that it's always accurate. So always double check these. This description here is the description from your bank account. So you can, kind of briefly look at it and see what it was for. But I recommend, especially if it's something new, just clicking on it, making sure that's what it is before you add it. So for Stripe, we have a lot of Stripe. I can go through and add another rule for those. I create a new rule for Stripe. Again, it's money in to all bank accounts. Excuse me. Description contains, I'm going to take all this other stuff out and just have it Stripe. It's going to be a deposit. Again, sale of product to Stripe. I'm going to leave the memo off, turn off the auto add, and save it. And then again, it's going to make a rule for all of those. I'm going to sort by description, scroll down to all these Stripe, and add. I'm just going to add some of them so we can move on. All right, so there is a couple other things you can do on here. So you can just straight add transactions. You can also add transfers. So if we go down here, I'm going to do to the Bank of America one. So there's a couple different things going on with this Bank of America one. So it's telling me that it found 3 records. So if I click on it, it shows 3 records. And like I said, QuickBooks is just a program, so it's just looking at dollar amounts. So it found 3 records that are $500. If we look at them, none of them are actually Bank of America. So I also see a lot of people who will, in this case, it's 3 records, but it'll say like found 1 match, and people will just match it without actually looking to see what it's matching to. So we look at these and say, none of this is what it is. This was a payment to my credit card. So I'm going to go up here. We have the categorize, which is what we did first, the adding, the find match, which none of these match. So I'm going to record it as a transfer. There's also record as a credit card payment. These two are the same thing. This one's just separated as credit card payment. So you can use either one when you're doing a transfer to a credit card. So I'm going to say this is a transfer to my Bank of America credit card. So you would use this transfer if you're transferring from like checking to savings, from checking to a credit card. You can use it if you're transferring money from your business account to your personal account. Basically, just if you're transferring money, this is what you would use. So this is a transfer to my Bank of America Visa, and I'm going to go ahead and click record transfer. So that's kind of the second thing you can do. And then we'll go through and do an actual matching. So if we go down here, this one here shows 1 record found. So like I said, a lot of people will see, oh, 1 record found, great. I'm going to just go ahead and match it without looking to make sure that that's what it is. So I want to click on it. The bank detail only tells me that it's a check. So I would want to double check, either like pulling up my bank account, or if I just know that this was the right check. But I want to make sure that the check that cleared was actually this check. So if I verify, yes, I know that was the check that went through, cleared my account, I can just match. So those are basically the 3 ways that you can add transactions: add a new one, make a transfer, or match a previous transaction. I'm going to go up here to this cash and carry one. So a lot of people buy stuff from cash and carry. You might be buying items that are for more than 1 category. So you can split a transaction into multiple categories. So you click on the transaction. If you go down here next to add, there's a split button. So I'm going to add my payee up here. And this was a new one, so I'm going to add a new one, make sure it's a vendor, and click save. I'm not using location, so I'm going to leave that blank. So let's say that we had supplies that were $100, and I had, what else I have here? Some ice cream cost of goods sold that were $250. So as I add numbers here, you can see over here, it tells me the amount, the original amount, and what my difference is. So you can see how much you have left that you need to categorize before you can add it. You can add as many lines as you want. You just click add lines. I'm gonna say, we also just had some toppings for $50. And then just some general supplies for the rest. So, oops, put that number wrong. So once these amounts equal the original amount, you'll see this difference of 0, and then it will let you add it. So you can go ahead and apply and accept, and it adds that transaction. So you can split expenses or deposits, and you can have as many lines as you want to. So let's say we added something by mistake. So I'm going to click this one. I'm going to say click transfer and click, oh, that was a mistake. Sorry about my dog if he's barking in the background. I made a mistake. I need to go ahead and undo it. So we have 3 different spots here. We have review, for review, categorized, and excluded. So for review is where it has everything that we need to add. The categorized, these are all the transactions that we've added. So we can go here and we can look down and find the one that we made a mistake with. It was this one here. And you just click undo. And then if I go back to for review, I can see that back here in the for review. So if you make a mistake with any of them, you just go to categorize, find the one that you made a mistake, click undo, and it'll show back up in for review. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about excluded. The only time you ever really need to exclude any transactions is once in a while your bank might have an error where it enters transactions twice. But really every transaction that comes through, you should be adding it to your books. You shouldn't be excluding any of them. So I'm not really go into the excluded. I'm going to talk a little bit more about rules. I really like rules because most people have a lot of expenses that they pay monthly, like utility bills. And so it's nice to be able to create a rule to apply it to all those transactions. So once you create a rule, it shows up here in this top tab under rules. So we can see we have our Shopify and our Stripe rules. If you want to go in and change them, all you have to do is click edit, and it will show that original screen that you had, and you can change anything you want to. So if the name of it, sometimes the way that bank descriptions are change a little bit, so you might need to change the name of it. Or sometimes like if Shopify now only shows like shop in their description or something, sometimes you need to change it so that it will apply to the right transactions. So you just change whatever you want to and then click save. If you don't want to use this rule anymore, you just click the little arrow and click delete. And so this will show you all your rules. You can create a new rule straight from here. Again, it just pops up that same screen that we went over. A couple more things about rules. So if you have, like, say you have QuickBooks and you use QuickBooks Online and you also use QuickBooks Payroll. And so you have 2 expenses that might both say, I think they both say Intuit. So you don't want to apply the rule to all of them because they're categorized a little bit differently. So if you have, let's say your Intuit for your monthly subscription comes out of your checking, and your Intuit for payroll comes out of your credit card, you can have it apply to only certain accounts. So I'm going to say if Intuit came out just of my checking account, no, I don't have my credit card on here. So normally you would have more than one account show up on here because I only have one. It's only letting me do one. But you would just click the box next to the account that it comes out of. So you would do everything else the same, but instead of money out of all bank accounts, you would just click the one account.
Sarah, there's a couple.
And then the other,
Sorry.
yeah,
A couple questions in
no,
the
it's fine.
chat. So the first one is, so as you are adding these transactions through this process, is there a way to attach a receipt or invoice as you are posting them, or do you have to open them back up after the fact to add supporting documentation?
So if you click on it, you can click this little add attachment. So you can do it as you're entering the transaction. I'll also show you how to go back and look at the transaction and add it after the fact also. But this is how you can add it right as you're adding the transaction.
And then the next question is, would it be best practice to open each employee paycheck that comes through to put in the employees instead of just the check number as it comes through from the bank?
Yes, if you have checks coming through, you should always make sure that you're adding a name to it, whether that's an employee or a vendor or anything, you should always add a name. There's a few reasons why. The first one that I always look at is the potential of getting audited. The more detailed your information is in here, basically the happier the IRS is going to be with you, and the better proof you have that that's what you actually paid for. So especially if it comes to employees, possible 1099 vendors, you want to make sure that you have as much information as you can for each transaction in here. The other reason is if you want to go back and pull a report to see like all the paychecks you paid to an employee or all the expenses that you paid to a vendor, if you don't add a payee, if you don't add a vendor name or a customer name, you can't pull it up. You'd have to search through descriptions to find it. And we'll talk about, I think in the last one, we talk about reports, and I'll show you how to do that. But if you don't put a vendor name in, you can't pull reports that show like how much money you've paid to a certain vendor, or it makes it a lot more difficult to look back and see how much you paid to an employee, or make sure that you had written all your checks to your employee. And so you want to make sure that you always have a vendor name and a customer name.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah. Let's see. Just want to make sure I have everything there. Okay, so the other cool function that I like about QuickBooks that they came out with, it's probably been within the last year or so, is their receipts. So I'm going to click up here. So QuickBooks has an app that you can use on your phone or your tablet. It has some basic things you can do on there, but the cool thing that I love about it is that you can take pictures of receipts. So I love it for my clients because I have a lot of clients who are like on the go. Their office is basically their car and they're losing receipts all the time. So from the app, you can take a picture of your receipt, or from here, you can upload it straight from your computer if you want to scan it, or you can also set up an email. So you like basically email it to them. So I took a picture of a receipt earlier. So once you take a picture or you upload it, it will show up down here. So you click the review and it shows you a picture of the receipt. So you go through and figure out what kind of document it is, whether it's a receipt or a bill. This was a receipt, and kind of just like the banking center, you want to enter in who it was to, which account it was from. So this is from my checking account, what the payment date is. It will fill out some of this stuff. It's not always 100% accurate. It kind of seems to depend on the receipt, kind of how clean the receipt is. But this is the correct date. Then you want to pick whatever it was categorized as. I'm just going to put this in as supplies. A description, you can add a description if you want to. You want to double check that the total amount is on here. I noticed sometimes with the receipts, if you, like this one has like a savings, like you saved so-and-so dollars, sometimes it'll take that as the total amount. So just verify that that's actually the amount you paid, not some kind of savings or something. Again, you can add a memo if you want to, location, class, reference number if you have it. If you're entering bills in here, it's nice to put a reference number so you can put the number of the bill. You click Save and Next. It's just going to verify that this was correct, and then it says no matches found, so it means that I haven't already entered an expense in the banking center for this amount yet. So since there was no matches, I'm going to create a new expense. And now if I go back to the banking center and I scroll down to see, it came through on the 9th, I can see here my expense for $31.55, and so I'm going to go ahead and match it to the transaction from my bank. So you're entering the transaction from the receipt center, and then you're matching it to your bank transaction in the banking center. So I really like it also because then if I go to my bank register, I can see all of the transactions here. So this, I can see my Fred Meyer transaction, and if I go to edit it, I go down here and it's attached that receipt to my transaction. So I'm going to go back a step here real quick just to kind of walk that through. So from the banking center, if you want to go back and edit any transactions, or if you want to add receipts to them or make any changes, I go to the bank register. This is just like a checkbook register looks. You would go down and find your transaction, click edit, and then you can, excuse me, you can make any changes that you want to from here. So if you forgot to put in a payee name, or you realize this was actually for a different category or needs to be split into more than one category, you can make any changes. If you want to add attachments here, all you have to do is drag and drop your attachment into this little box right here, and then just save and close it. The only thing that you don't want to change from here, you can change anything that you want to on here, but don't change the amount, because this amount came straight from the bank. So this amount needs to match the transaction. If you start typing things and you forget what the amount was, up here under expense, if you click one online banking matches, you can click it and it will tell you what the original amount was. So if you realize, $10 of that was for office supplies, if I go down here and put in office supplies and put $10, it changes this amount up here. And then I think, oh, the rest was for cost of goods sold, but I don't remember what the rest was. I can click up here and see it was $31.55. So then I can do that and see my total again was $31.55. Make sure that still matches here. And as long as that matches, you can save and close. If you try to do it for a separate amount or a different amount and you save and close, it will tell you right here, hey, that's a different amount than what you matched to your bank. Are you sure you want to make this change? And so you want to click no, go back and fix it. And then once it matches, it'll let you close it. So I see a lot of people do that. They'll go back and change the amount, especially with deposits. I'm not sure why. I think people will get a deposit from a customer, so they go in and enter the amount from a customer and then kind of forget about the rest of the amount of the deposit and will change the amount of deposit. And you don't want to do that because you're matching the amount to what your bank says you have. So it needs to match what the bank says. Let me go back to the banking here. I think if there was anything else I wanted to go over. I think that was everything that I had on my list of kind of the basics, and then the common kind of errors that I see. I'm happy to go into more detail if people have more questions.
I think there's a question that was sent to you privately in the chat. I don't see it, but
oh, can you memorize certain expenses that are done monthly? You can. We are going to go into entering expenses when we talk about accounts payable, which I think is the first one in January. You can't memorize transactions from the banking center, but you can memorize when you enter expenses separately. So we'll go, I don't really want to go into it today because there's a lot that goes into it, but we'll talk about it in the one that's for account payable. I think it's the first one in January. I had another message. Looks like you just deposit all your checks from customers and don't enter these checks into QuickBooks until you get the transaction information from the bank instead of doing individually when the checks come into a customer's account. Okay, so this is kind of depends on how you use QuickBooks. So some people use QuickBooks just kind of for the basics, and they enter all their transactions straight from the banking center. So they don't enter any invoices to customers, any bills, anything like that. All they do is enter the transactions through the banking center. So that's kind of what I was going into today, because that's what I see the most. If you actually use QuickBooks to invoice customers and receive payments from customers and enter bills, then you would do a lot more of matching transactions. And so in the next section, when we do accounts receivable, we'll talk about invoicing customers, receiving payments from them, and then creating deposits with those payments. And then you would just match that deposit to a deposit that's in here. So we'll talk about how to do that in the next session. This is just kind of assuming, like with Stripe, that you just enter it all as sales, because this is probably a restaurant where you don't keep track of every single customer. You just keep track of the total amount that comes in each day. So I'll go into in the next session how to receive payments, how to create deposits in QuickBooks, and then you would just match those deposits to the bank.
So Sarah,
Yeah.
when you hook the banking, your banking online banking to QuickBooks, like how does that work? Like when you make a transaction, does it immediately show up, or do you have to go in and like every once in a while do the spreadsheet thing like you showed?
So if you directly connect your bank to QuickBooks, the transactions come over daily. So every morning it updates it. So like when I come in the morning, I can update my banking and it will show all the transactions for the day before and everything up to this morning, basically. If you don't want to connect your account through online, or you can't for whatever reason, then you have to manually do the spreadsheet, whenever you have time or whenever you can. Most people connect their bank accounts, and so the transactions come over daily.
Got it.
Feel free to unmute yourselves now, ask any questions, post them in the chat. You can raise your hands with the raise hand features, however you want to do it. I had a question when you were talking about the excluded transactions and that people shouldn't need to use them or they wouldn't need to be there. Would it be something that you would use maybe if there's a mistake or something that wasn't supposed to be in your business category? Maybe it was you deposited it in the wrong account, or
that's a great question. Actually, something I meant to go over. So I see a lot of people use the exclude function for that. So if they accidentally use their business account for a personal transaction, they just exclude the transaction. You should not do that, because your bank account on here, it needs to show every single transaction that you have coming through, whether you accidentally use it for personal or there was a mistake, like if there's some kind of maybe fraud on your account or the bank made a mistake, you still need to record that. If you don't record it, then your bank balance in QuickBooks is not going to match your actual bank balance. So you need to show every transaction that's going in and out of your bank account. So if you accidentally use your business account for personal expenses, you would just go through and like, let's say this one was accidentally a personal account. You still do like you normally would, and you would add the vendor, and as a category, you would just put in owner's pay and personal expenses and add it. If there was some kind of error on the bank's part, like if they charged you a free fee and they shouldn't have, or they put the deposit in for the wrong amount, you still need to enter that transaction. How you categorize it is kind of up to you. I recently had a client who had a bunch of fraud on their account, so they made a separate category just for fraud. The great thing about that is that they put everything in the fraud so they could make sure that the bank refunded them everything for that fraud, and that fraud account eventually ended out at zero. They actually found an error where the bank didn't refund them everything, so it was a good way to keep track of it there. But no matter what the transaction is, you need to record it on here. So really the only reason why you should use that exclude is once in a while, like one of our local credit unions just updated their banking system, and for like a couple days, every single transaction came over twice. So I had to go through and exclude all the duplicates because they actually only came out of the bank once, but they were showing it QuickBooks twice. So that would be an example of using exclude if your bank account is showing different, like the duplicate thing, you would need to exclude the ones that are duplicate, but it's very rare that that happens. So most people don't use exclude and never should use exclude.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Would it be easy to attach like two transactions, say that there was a error made, and then say that the bank, like you were talking about previously, deposited the wrong total or whatever, and then they go through and make the correction? What's going to be the simplest way to attach those two to show that those two transactions are related?
So it kind of depends how you enter stuff. If you're using QuickBooks and like entering payments from customers, then the amount from the customer isn't going to match your deposit, and that can be a little bit difficult about how to record them. The way that I do it is, let's see, I'm going to pull up this one, for example. So let's say this one was for the wrong amount. So I would split it. And let's say it was actually supposed to be $2,800. So I can see my amount was 28, the difference is 159. And so I would put in, maybe there's a category called Ask My Accountant, which is for like questions that you have. And I would put the difference in there. And then you can see the difference is 0. And then when that other amount comes out, or they make that change, I would just put it back to the same account. So they would like zero each other out. Or the opposite could be true. Like if they recorded the deposit for more than it should have been, maybe it should have only been 2,500. Then I would put the difference in a separate account. And then when they correctly do that 140.65, I would put it into that same account and they would zero each other out. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Did we answer this question? She said she meant, do you make reverse entries?
Do you make reverse entries? Is that what you said?
Yeah, and Mary, if you want to go ahead and unmute, you can ask this if you'd like.
We enter it as a transfer and then we realize that was incorrect. You just go into categorized, find that transaction that you entered down here and undo it. The other thing you can do if you, let's say we do this one. Can't type today. So let's say we enter this one in, we added it, and then we realize that was the wrong category. You can go to your bank register and find it. And if I don't want to like have to scroll down to search for it, I can filter. This little button up here is a filter. So you can filter by dates, you can filter by payee. So I'm going to go down and filter by payee and find it. So once you find the transaction, you can go back and edit it, and you can change it to the correct account, and then just save and close it. So you can do it one of two ways. So if you make an error with a transaction and you just want to start over, you just go to categorize, find it, and click undo. Or if you just did the wrong category, or maybe put the wrong name in, you can just go find the transaction and change it from there. If you enter the transaction and you want to change it, if you go up here to this little magnifying glass and you click on it, it will show you your most recent transactions on here. This is where you can search for anything. You can search by amount, you can search by name, you can search by anything, but it also, if you don't type anything, it will just show you all your most recent transactions. So you can just click on it from here and it shows that same screen, and you can change it from there. So there's a few different ways you can go back and change things that you made errors on.
There was another question. Is there a free QuickBooks account or an open source version that works well?
There are usually free QuickBooks, like they'll give you a free 30-day trial. I don't know of any free ones for more than just like a trial version.
So I know when I started early on, I used QuickBooks Self-Employed because I got it free for a year. And I realized that it just doesn't have the capabilities that the other programs do. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you notice as well?
Yeah, the self-employed and the simple start ones, but especially the self-employed, I don't even think you can pull reports from it. Like basically it's meant to just kind of enter all your expenses into it so you can hand it over to your accountant at the end of the year, and it will track your, I think like track mileage for tax purposes, but it doesn't, you can put information into it, it doesn't really give you much out of it. I think it's more meant for like freelance people who don't really have much expenses and just kind of want a place to record all their income, but don't really need to see any like profit and loss or look at any statements. So I haven't looked at it in a long time, but I usually don't recommend using it just because you can't get much out of it.
There's another, did you do that?
I just saw that. Is there a way to filter registered transactions by whether or not they have an attachment? I have not found a way to do that. I have been asked that before. As far as I know, you can't just show transactions with attachments. If someone knows a way, I would love to know, because I do get asked that question a lot. But as far as I know, there is no way to just see transactions with attachments.
Few more minutes left. Does anyone have any more questions?
I'll ask another question. Sarah, is there any other like major errors that you see people making that you haven't mentioned so far?
The only other big thing that I see people do is, so they enter all the transactions from their bank through here, and then they never actually go and reconcile their bank account. And I think people assume because they're entering transactions from here that all the transactions are coming over, so they don't need to reconcile because this is reconciling. And I'll give you an example. It just happened to me yesterday. I had a client that I was going through and reconciling their account for November, and for some reason their bank transactions did not come through from November 10th to November 21st. Have no idea why. There was just no transactions that came through. So when I went and reconciled, I actually had to add like 30 transactions for those dates that had not come through in the banking center. So there are times where they're just transactions don't come through, or sometimes they're duplicates. So you still want to go through and reconcile. And you can do that straight from here if you go to the bank register and then click reconcile. You do this every month. You find your statement from your bank, find the ending balance on your statement. We'll say I'm just going to throw in a number, the ending date, and you'd start reconciling. And you can see here all the transactions that have these little green boxes. That means that they were matched through the banking center to a transaction, and they automatically check themselves. But like our balance is off, so you would need to go through and make sure that all the transactions in QuickBooks are on your statement from your bank to verify that everything came through, that nothing came through twice. Also to make sure, like if we look up here, we have an expense to charter from October 12th. And if that was something that we paid online, that should have gone through my account by now. So I should see why that hasn't gone through. Or I have this deposit that was entered for October 30th. Again, I haven't matched it to anything in my bank account. So maybe it did go through my bank account and it didn't go through the banking center. But you can find a lot of errors here, either you entering things twice, or QuickBooks entering things twice, or transactions not coming over from your bank. So that's a big thing I see also. People just seem to assume that if their bank is connected, that every transaction is coming through, that it's accurate, and they don't need to double check everything. But you still need to go through and reconcile your account every month to make sure that everything is accurate. And then like I talked about, the biggest one I see is that just people not entering a vendor or a payee on there, which makes it's making, like right now I'm helping people get ready for 1099s, and it's making it difficult because I can't find the vendors to find who they need to send 1099s to, because they didn't enter a vendor name. So there's multiple reasons why it's difficult. So the more information you can enter from here, the better off you are for reports. If you ever got audited, for 1099s, the end of the year, if your accountant is looking at your meals and entertainment account, they want to go through and verify, who the meals were to and if they're actually deductible. And it's a lot easier for them if they actually have a vendor name and not just a description from the bank.
Awesome.
I have a question. Can I ask a quick one?
Yeah.
When these transactions, when you download them from the bank and they're sitting here in this screen for review, do they show up in the bank account as like pending or anything like that before you actually add them, or do they not reflect in the bank balance until you actually add them?
So you can see up here the bank balance, and in QuickBooks, because I uploaded a spreadsheet, it doesn't show the bank balance. But if you connect it to your account, it will show what the bank balance is. And then in QuickBooks, this account balance is only the transactions you've actually entered. So none of these transactions are included in that account balance. They're also not in your register at all. Clear that. So all these transactions here are either ones you added from the banking center or added on your own, but they don't reflect in your balance until you actually add them. So they're kind of sitting here pending and not affecting your QuickBooks at all until you actually add them.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if that's it for questions, I will start sharing my screen and give you all a list of the next sessions, which will be again on the 17th at 10 a.m. And then we're going to take a nice long break for the holidays, and we will come back again January 13th, and then the final will be on the 20th. So Thank you for joining. If there aren't any last questions, have a wonderful day. I will, of course, hang out here for a few minutes, and you're all happy to, or you're welcome to just chime in, ask, unmute, ask any questions you have. You're welcome. Lots of thank yous in here. Yes, I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for this training. This is pretty awesome.
Stephanie, would you recommend, like for me, because I don't have a high volume of clients or expenses yet. Do you think it makes sense to just keep track of things in like an Excel spreadsheet, kind of like the one that's in QuickBooks to start out?
Well, I mean, that's kind of a Sarah question. You know, there's lots of ways that you can keep track of things, especially if you're on a limited budget. But I think Sarah's advice for having as much detail as possible, that makes it easy for your bookkeeper, makes it easy if you're audited. I think that's always best practice, but I'm going to defer to Sarah.
I would agree. I mean, I think it is hard starting off like with a limited budget and having limited expenses. I always recommend, if you can afford it and you can, to start with QuickBooks or some kind of software, because at some point, I'm not sure what kind of business you have, but at some point, hopefully you will get really busy with your business and you won't have time to do the bookkeeping. So it is good to have all of those things in place before that happens, before you get overwhelmed. But again, if budget's an issue, Excel spreadsheets work totally fine to track things. It's just hard to create reports from them. It just takes more time. If you need to create a profit and loss, you have to take your numbers from your spreadsheet and manually create one. So it really depends, you know, what information you want out of it. If you're just doing it to keep track for taxes at the end of the year, then Excel spreadsheets work great. If you can easily make reports from them, then again, Excel works great. It's a lot of it's personal preference. I'm all about like trying to make things easier though. So if you can afford it, I would say use some kind of software just to make it easier and to have a great system in place. So if you do get busy, if you get to the point where you don't have as much time, you already have a great system that you can get great reports out of.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Samantha.
Yeah, thanks for offering this.
You bet, you bet. Well, that's it. I'm going to wish you all a very, very happy day, and I hope to see you on the 17th. Bye.